Human beings have a natural fear of monsters, which is why zombies, vampires, and demons are prevalent in the horror genre. But the most unforgettable creatures often prey on another primal fear: the unknown. The less we see of a beast, the more unsettling it is. The audience's imagination is more terrifying than any special effect, which is why movie monsters usually appear sparingly. Sometimes the fiend is never shown completely or for no more than a second at a time. Other times they aren't revealed at all. In theory, taking this approach can be disappointing, but this strategy can pay off, since it compels you to second-guess what kind of monster the characters are up against. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, and let's take a look at these terrifying movie monsters that barely appear. Starting with the Boar Razorback. The unprecedented success of Jaws led to a splurge of copycats, involving piranhas, spiders, frogs, and rabbits. Unsurprisingly, many imitators didn't come close to matching Jaws, since they didn't emulate Steven Spielberg's less is more approach. One of the few Jaws clones that understood this concept is Razorback. Based on Peter Brennan's novel of the same name, the cult classic is set in the Australian outback, where visitors and locals alike find themselves being tormented by a gigantic man-eating boar. Effects artist Bob McCarran pulled out all the stops for this tusked tyrant, designing 6 animatronics, including one fully sized model. Instead of showing off McCarran's impressive handiwork, the titular beast is kept off-screen or only partially seen. In fact, there isn't a full shot of the kaiju piggy at any point. Luckily, this decision makes the brutish boar come across more like a mythical monster rather than an animal, accentuating the terror every time it shows up. The Old Ones in the Mouth of Madness. Despite not being an adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft, John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness captures the cosmic horror of the revered author flawlessly. The otherworldly tale opens with investigator John Trent being hired to find missing horror novelist Sutter Kane. Trent initially believes Kane's disappearance is a publicity stunt, but later learns an ancient race called the Old Ones has manifested the author's writings into reality, driving people insane. When Trent physically enters Kane's warped world, he finds himself in a long corridor being chased by the Old Ones. Serving at the story's epicenter, you'd expect these Lovecraftian beasts to have a glorious reveal. Instead, the scene focuses on Trent's face, with the Old Ones barely visible in the background. The camera cuts to Trent's pursuers a few times, but little can be seen, save for an out-of-focus claw or fang. The Old Ones' appearance is so vague, it's hard to tell what they look like or how many there are. Although decisions like these are sometimes done to hide poor special effects, behind-the-scenes shots illustrate how superbly these puppets and animatronics turned out. However, it's established the Old Ones are beyond our reality and warp our world while remaining in the shadows, so this minimalism benefits the story. The Doppelganger, Lake Mungo. Joel Anderson's found-footage horror explores the death of a 16-year-old, Alice Palmer, who drowned in Lake Mungo. Believing her spirit is attempting to make contact, her brother Matthew set up cameras around the house, seemingly capturing Alice's ghost in her bedroom. When Matthew confesses he faked the footage, it looks like the whole haunting was a sham, but after spooky activities continue to happen to the Palmers, it becomes hard to tell what's real and what isn't. Travelling to Lake Mungo, the Palmers discover Alice's phone and watch the last video she recorded. In this clip, Alice is walking along the shore when a mysterious figure marches towards her. As this person comes into frame, it's revealed to be a doppelganger of Alice. Stranger still, this duplicate resembles Alice when her body was later found, including the bloated skin and malformed face. This moment is absolutely skin-crawling, not just because of the morbid image, but also for proving beyond any shadow of a doubt that the supernatural occurrences the Palmers have experienced were real. Most bewildering of all, it's never explained what this doppelganger is or why it appeared. The Monsters Arcadian. Longlegs was such a hit in 2024, it overshadowed Nicolas Cage's other venture in horror that year, Arcadian. In this post-apocalyptic thriller, the face-off actor plays Paul, a father who tries to protect his sons, Joseph and Thomas, from nocturnal monsters. Virtually nothing is explained about the creatures, including their origins or their names. Although Paul takes reasonable precautions, it's never enough, since he's oblivious to the adversary's skills and abilities. After Joseph locks himself in the house, one of the brutes sticks its arm through the latch trying to grab him. Of course, Joseph seems safe since he's too far away. That's why it's freaky to see the monster elongate its fingernail until it's mere inches from Joseph's face. The monsters are built up so well, a poor reveal could have diluted the tension in an instant. Fortunately, the creature's design is a masterclass in triggering primal fear. Simply put, the monsters resemble a chimera of predators, due to their shaggy hair, crocodile snout, hippo teeth, and spider movements. They also have a camouflage forehead that resembles a human face, giving off uncanny valley vibes. Even though over-designing these fiends could have backfired, the special effects crew nailed it. The entity, the Endless. In the Endless, brothers Justin and Aaron return to the cult they escaped from years earlier, hoping to find closure. When they discover the community is thriving, Justin and Aaron consider staying since they're unable to function in the real world. However, the siblings change their tune when they see the awesome power of its leader, a cosmic being simply called the Entity. During their stay, one cult member, Hal, talks to Justin about impossible colours which exist beyond people's visual spectrum, so they cannot be seen or imagined. This is a great analogy for the Entity itself, since it cannot be understood by the human mind. Even when the Entity performs non-malicious acts like manipulating weather, space and gravity, there's a great sense of uneasiness since it's impossible to wrap your head around what's happening. Although the Entity is wicked and godlike, the fact that its form, intentions and limits are beyond comprehension is what really gets under your skin. The Ghosts, the Haunting. In Robert Wise's adaptation of Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, a team of paranormal investigators spends the night in an eerie mansion to verify whether it's occupied by ghosts. But by the end, that question is left unanswered. Spirits are never directly seen, so it's hard to tell whether the ominous occurrences in the house are supernatural in origin. The lead character, Eleanor, bears witness to peculiar sounds, cold spots and pounding on the doors, all indicating the building is definitely haunted. On the other hand, much of the story is seen through Eleanor's perspective, who comes across as an unreliable narrator due to her fragile emotional state. As a result, what Eleanor claims to see, hear and experience may only exist in her mind. This ambiguity keeps everyone on their toes every single time something creepy happens. Sure, it would be frightening if the ghost's presence was undeniable, but at least there would be some sense of closure, knowing they were real all along. But since the spectre's existence is left uncertain, that fear of the unknown is likely to stay with viewers long after the credits roll. The Marauder, Evil Dead Rise. Rather than taking place in an isolated cabin, Evil Dead Rise sets the stage inside an apartment building in LA. Though our heroines, Beth and Cassie, do their best against the Deadites, they fail to stop family members Ellie, Bridget and Danny from being possessed by the demonic spirits. After hacking the 3 Deadites' bodies to pieces, Beth and Cassie flee to the parking lot hoping to escape. To their surprise, they're confronted by Ellie, Bridget and Danny, who've merged into a triple-threat Deadite called the Marauder. Now, such a creature has never appeared in Evil Dead before, so you'd expect there to be at least one money shot of the multi-limbed ghoul, especially since this particular Deadite is teased in the Book of the Dead in the previous scene. Instead, the Marauder is deliberately obscured throughout the entire climax. Although the camera focuses on the Marauder's faces, there isn't a clear shot of its entire body for more than a second. This monster's reveal could have been ruined by poor special effects or distracting CGI, so it was a smart move to show the Marauder up close or in fragments, since the scene feels more claustrophobic and personal. The Virus Pontypool. In Pontypool, radio DJ Grant Mazzy is working in his studio when he discovers civilians in the area have inexplicably turned into zombies. Though Grant and his colleagues are rattled, they believe they should be safe from the infection since they're locked inside their facility. But over time, Grant discovers the virus isn't spread by a pathogen or a bite, but by the English language. It's uncertain what words infect the listeners, so Grant's team hasn't a clue what they can and cannot say. The virus extends to writing too, so anybody can be infected simply by reading a specific word, sentence, or phrase. What's worse is that any attempt to formulate a plan to get out of danger runs the risk of accidentally spreading the disease. Although Pontypool's concept sounds bizarre, this type of virus is more petrifying than any airborne agent, since there's virtually no way to avoid it in the long run. Hastar Tumbbad. In this Indian folk horror, Vinayak becomes obsessed with locating a hidden treasure belonging to the forgotten god of greed, Hastar. In the prologue, it's mentioned how Hastar's insatiable cravings compelled his brethren to seal him away and cover up all record of his existence. The fact that his own pantheon fears Hastar immediately establishes how utterly terrifying he is. Though Hastar doesn't feature outright, Vinayak has constant run-ins with his victims, all of whom have suffered an unbearable fate after encountering the avaricious adversary. These confrontations don't just serve as a warning to Vinayak, but further tease Hastar's inevitable introduction. When Vinayak discovers Hastar's lair, he's horrified to learn it's a throbbing, pulsating flesh pit, indicating the dark entity's home exists within a living organism. And when Vinayak sees people encased in the fleshy walls pleading for their lives, it amplifies the threat Hastar poses even further. After reaching the center of the lair, he comes face to face with Hastar, who resembles an emaciated, skinless being, garnered in nothing but a loincloth and a crown. Although Hastar looks like the stuff of nightmares, this moment hits harder since he was built up so masterfully.